Good morning, Graham. Oliver, you're on the air, sir. Good morning, Graham. What do you got here, Smitty? It's on the move. Hi, Graham.
Yes, I'm there.
You're on the air, sir.
Oh, hello. We're talking to Patty?
Yeah, this is Patty.
Patty, yes, I'm just phoning from the Port-au-Port Bay St. George Fracking Awareness Group, and I was sitting down with Minister Daly and Minister Cornick the other day at the meeting, and we're glad to see the review going ahead, but we watch it with skepticism, and I did hear your little preamble that we've got to accept whatever comes out of the review. Well, you make a good point in that, but when you look at where government sits right now, and I don't care if it's liberal or conservative, they would love to see this go ahead. And when I hear Minister Daly, who I have respect for, say that they've already done the work, they've already put the regulations in place. Well, the other day when we were having our chat, he said, we've looked at other jurisdictions, we've looked at Alberta. Well, Alberta is an interesting place, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Wonderful regulations. Perfect for the oil industry. Gerald Proddy sits down as the regulator. The regulator is totally paid by the industry, and they make the rules for the oil industry. So when he says, well, we want to have robust regulations and so on, and they're looking at Alberta, and they already have an attitude that they want to develop fracking, then it's very difficult to say in advance that you will go with what the panel recommends, because you have to look at what will the panel be. Will they be independent? And certainly we need industry, we need environment, we need health, we need tourism, we need many aspects in this province represented on it. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome, especially with public scrutiny.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think the liability issues, there's only so much you can do. We've even had very lax liability requirements of our offshore oil operators. We've just recently increased their liability when it comes to a spill. So we have to pay very strict attention to that. But the issues, as I understand them, for those opposed to the concept of fracking, some of what can go wrong, there's no dollar amount can reclaim the potential hazard to it. And I'm just regurgitating your position here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Whether it comes to the pollution of the watershed, no amount of money can really repair that. Whether if it's the issue of earthquakes. Some of this I'm not in line with some of the opposition to it, but there's no amount of money can really take back if any of those types of things happen. What we can do, though, is we can have distinct regulations that you have to disclose in full form and always open for pop testing of the fracking chemicals and fluids that are used. There has to be strict plans for the use of the wastewater. There has to be regulations for reclamation of land. There has to be all those things we can control, and then huge bonds required from the insurance companies on some of the things that we can indeed use their money to put back in order, things that they may indeed have ruined when it comes to fracking. When it comes to the issue and the independence of the board, if the board is commissioned and people are appointed and they represent the diverse backgrounds required, and we can consider them as independent as humanly possible, even though that's not entirely possible, if and when we agree, and all sides agree, that this panel is composed or compiled of the right people with the right backgrounds, then we really do have to have some acknowledgement of their review will rule the day. And it won't be an opportunity to then question, paying the piper. The government is paying an invoice. Consequently, the reviewers are saying what the government wants them to say. We don't even know what the government wants on that front. I would love to see their internal review that came up as inconclusive. I'd like to know why and where the hurdles are they've identified internally, but we won't get that information. So I don't know where we're going on this one, Graham, and I think it's inevitable that it's going to happen on the province's west coast. But I do think that all the issues that you put forward as far as liability and the independence and diversity of the commissioned panel, I think that's important.
Yeah, but I think the thing about it's going ahead, that attitude, it will go ahead. I think that's yesterday's views in the sense of there is a tremendous amount of information getting out there right now. And that wasn't happening. If you had asked me about fracking 3 years ago, I would say I have, very limited knowledge. Right now, we got a huge amount of information coming out. We've got the state of New York coming out and medical studies that they've taken time to put together. This is why I'm so glad science is coming into play. And there's one other thing that I don't think your listeners are probably aware of. We all use Alberta as what we want to be, and we think that if it's going to go ahead, like it goes ahead in Alberta. But here's we talk about economics. Alberta this year is running a $3.5 billion, that's B, deficit. Mm-hmm. Next year, they'll run a $4 billion. The following year, they'll run a $4 billion. If there is so much money generated from the royalties of things like fracking, because Alberta is fracked to death, then why are these governments running deficit year over year? Yet we're talking about possibly being in surplus next year. We have sustainable developments that are going on in Newfoundland in our economy. And that's things like tourism, small business we can promote. But when we put all our, we have, I think, governments putting all their eggs in one basket. Yes, we've got the offshore. Now we're going to what is a highly industrialization of our shorelines, which competes with inshore fishery, water. If we look at water now, the town of Port East right now has a severe water shortage. They shut their water off at 8 o'clock at night. It doesn't turn on until the next morning. And even the hint of fracking coming into these areas, and we're looking at our entire coastline, we have problems with water in Newfoundland. We have Dr. Diane Maservi, who's done a study on water in Newfoundland, and we have problems with water. So there's many things that are going to come into play. And one other point that you made, if we have the rules and regulations. I have talked to geologists that have told me that seldom do government regulators or inspectors come and show up at a well site. So I'll put this scenario to you. We have this wastewater we have to dispose of, and we don't measure what's in it. And we send it to, let's say, Corner Brook to dispose of in their sewer system, or we send it to Stephenville to dispose in their sewer system, or one of the brooks or ocean outlets here along our coast. We, in many cases, don't have any idea of what's in that wastewater because they don't have time to test it.
But we can, right? We can do that stuff. We absolutely can.
But if we can, why aren't we doing it now?
Because we don't frack for one, so we don't. There's nothing to test.
That's questionable.
It's not.
Let's see what's happened in Shoal Point. Let's see what's happened with Vulcan Minerals out in Bay St. George South. They've fracked and they haven't even told anybody. The government regulators, it didn't see the light of day until we brought it up, and the environment ministers was red-faced in the House and had to go look and find out what actually happened here. So, yes, it's fine, but I sense sitting down with Daly, sitting down with Dwight Ball, sitting down with politicians, I've given them the presentations. I've done the work with them and talked to them. But it's until you sit down and look them in the eye and talk seriously with them, you can really see there is a push to frack. And it's like you say, and you make a good point, inevitably it may happen. And that's what's firing up the people here in the West Coast, and that is why this by-election out here in the district of Stephenville and Bay St. George East, it is just a shot across the bow of what will happen. And the organization that will go into this coastline to stop this will be huge. And there will be presentations, and there will be visits, and there will be expert people coming in, and there will be medical studies, and there will be water studies. They will be inundated with studies. And the review that comes out, there will be people there to ask questions. And politicians, it's another word to politicians. If they don't know what they're talking about, they're going to look awfully stupid.
Well, and nor do I think we can count on having politicians armed with the kind of background, experience, and training to speak to these issues, which is why the external review is praised by you and I think required of government. We don't have people in those elected positions that have the ability to talk to it in specific terms. If it comes down to an election that is based on this issue, then you win, because there's been more press and time given to those opposed to the concept of fracking than has ever been afforded to government as a proponent, which I think they've been very careful to not be seen as a proponent of fracking. They may be disappointed with the academics at Grenfell. They may be disappointed in people's lack of the entrepreneurial spirit, as they classified, to proceed with any of these opportunities in natural resources. But I think if it's a one-trick pony campaign, then you'll win. Your side will win, and the NDP will win the seat. But I don't think it's going to be that at all, because nor do I think everyone in that district rests on that as the number one issue. I would suggest they have issues that far outweigh the potential for fracking, especially since we aren't doing it. You have two examples of VOCM Minerals and the one at Shoal Point. I have to understand more about that before I can pass judgment on it, and I will plead ignorance on that front. This whole concept, though, Graham, for my money, and I've said this time and time again, it does not matter what any of these reviews say. People, one side or another, will be disappointed, and they will be quick to voice it, regardless of the independence or the diversity of the panel. So I think we are headed down a very predictable road here, and I don't know where it's going to end. Or actually, I know where it's going to end, but I don't know when. And I don't think it's. I don't think it's any coincidence in the timing of the commissioning of an external review and when this Bay St. George or Stephenville East by-election is coming. I think it's pretty tricky politics, and it's pretty tricky social policy, too.
Yeah, and I do applaud Minister Daly for coming out. And honestly, I try to be honest in this debate. Minister Daly, I think, came out here to meet with us, and I don't think he had a press release in his back pocket.
I think he came in good faith.
Yeah, he came and he sat down with us and he talked, and we had a very good discussion, frank at times, direct, polite, cordial, but he knew where we felt. I mean, the Port Bay St. George Fracking Awareness Group has been there since day one. It's grassroots, it's Facebook pages, it's meetings, so he had an idea, and he was sincere in saying, well, look, because what we did is, right up front, we demanded that each candidate give their statement on fracking, and that's published on our website and in our email list, so that we know what people are saying, because we don't have forums anymore.
We're asking for unarmed opinion, though, and we're laying that at their feet as if it's some sort of commitment to something they don't even fully understand, to something that they actually have to have an external review of. So once again, we're asking politicians to tread into waters that they don't even know what's under the surface. So, I mean, it's fine to say NDP, Liberal, PC candidate, give us your distinct position on fracking, but they can only tell you whatever the party tells them to say.
Sure.
Then they can dance around it because they don't know what the end result of this review will be. Graham, I'll let you wrap it up quickly, sir, before I have to go.
Okay, I'll wrap it up quickly, but I'm telling you what, when you ask parties their position, it's certainly, did you ever see a wasp nest destroyed or stirred up?
Sure.
Well, if you ask the politicians, because politicians don't want to speak about this issue, that's why they don't want to go to a forum, they don't want to have a public forum where people can ask them questions. Scott Reed would like to go in here without having to ask questions, and that is the way politicians are, and I respect them.
And the same thing for those opposed. They're opposed because they think the significant numbers who have the ability to strike an X on the ballot are opposed, so they're opposed. So that doesn't mean that they're right or informed. It just means that they're looking for their political fortunes.
Well,
in my opinion.
When you're apolitical, you can look at all the parties.
There's not much of that out there.
And say, let's look at what's happening and try to educate people, and that's what we're about. Thank you very much.
I always appreciate your time, Mr. Oliver. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.